Hi crafters, Amy here with Amy's Wares, and I have an easy holiday card to share with you today using a stencil. Now this is the Diagonal Stripes. This is an older stencil from a Colorful Life Designs, and I do use pixie spray on it for this application because it really does help hold down all those stripes. Now here's a photo of the finished card, but do stick around to the end and I will show you 2 additional bonus cards that I made with the same stencil but was able to get a completely different look to the finished card. So here you can see I'm pressing it down on my card base and using the brayer to really stick the stencil down so it doesn't shift on me when I'm doing my ink blending. Now this is a Neenah Classic Crest Solar White card base in A2 size, so that's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And I have the colors Samba and Mardi Gras. And these are mini ink pads from Catherine Pooler, and I'm going to use these. Now they're very juicy. I recently refilled all of my ink pads, so depending on how long you've been using yours, they may or may not kind of give off this much ink. But I'm working with a lot here, so you can see there's quite a bit coming off of my blending brush. But I'm basically going to cover the entire card front with this Samba ink. Now it looks a little orange on the screen, but it's actually a very bright red. It's maybe a little bit more, I don't know, yellowish in color, but it's definitely not as orange as it looks on the screen. Now, when you're working with a stripe stencil like this, you can kind of follow along the grain and maybe have less of a risk of kind of popping up the stencil, but that's where the pixie spray really comes in handy in holding it down. And you can see I'm trying to be mindful not to get red ink everywhere just because my ink pad is so juicy. So you can see I could actually leave it just like that and have a really cool candy cane look. But I wipe off my stencil, I wipe off my work surface, and then I'm using the same stick. I didn't spray any more on there, and I'm just pressing it down. Now, in fact, of all 3 cards that I made, I only used that one pass of, or one spray of the pixie spray. I did not keep having to reapply it. So you can absolutely reapply it if you find that it's losing some of the stick, but I was able to make 3 cards with no issue at all and not having to reapply the pixie spray. So here you can see I just basically turned the diagonal stripes the other direction, and now I'm making this really cool, I don't know if it's a plaid or if it's more like a gingham. Maybe tell me in the comments what you would call this. But basically I'm just coming in with the green. Now typically I would not overlap green and red just because they're going to kind of muddy up the color a little bit, but I knew this was going to be dramatic anyway, and I wasn't worried about it just because plaid kind of does that. I mean, it overlaps with the other colors. So I knew it was going to be intense and dark, and I was okay with that in this case. But I do think that would be a really fun way to use that stencil with maybe, I don't know, like a pink and a blue, and then it would make purple where it overlaps, or just maybe more pastel colors. So lots of options and lots of versatility with a stencil like that. Now these are dies. You can see it has the shadow layer and the word layer. These are from another small woman-owned business called LDRS Creative. They're in Michigan. And you can see I'm actually just using residual ink that's left over on my brush. You can see how juicy these ink pads are. But I'm basically just taking another panel of 110-pound cardstock, getting some of that residual ink off of my brush, and I'm basically creating the perfect color match to die cut out the sentiment. And then I'm using the white portion on the bottom to create the shadow layer. So I have my pick tool here. I'm just kind of pushing out the little fiddly bits. And then I have a perfect sentiment that matches the green that I used on my ink blending, and it says "'Tis the Season." And then I have the shadow layer just in the plain white cardstock, and that's going to help it really stand off the busy background and kind of not get lost. Now this is my solution for dealing with these little fiddly dies. If you've watched my videos, you know I can't stand liquid glue. The oozage drives me bonkers. So these are micro dots. I get them from Amazon. I'll link them below with all the other video or all the other items that I used in this video. So just expand underneath in the video description box and scroll down and you'll find details on all of these products. But basically it lays a bunch of little micro dots of glue, and it's perfect for these little fiddly sort of dies. And then I'm going to pop up the whole shebang with this foam tape. This I get from scrapbook.com. It's really sticky. I think it's an inch wide, and it just gives me some dimension and interest on this otherwise very simple design. So I'm just going to smack that down right on the front of the card. So there's not a lot of bulk, but it does have some visual interest. And then I decide to round a couple of the corners with my corner chomper. There is a 1/4 inch side and a 1/2 inch side. And then I decide I want to figure out what sentiment I want for the inside of the card. So these strips are also from LDRS Creative. These are really cool. You get one stamp with a bunch of sentiments, and then there's one die that works with all of these stackable sentiment stamps. And so you can cut them all out in one pass. Now, recently in the shop, they have this shadow layer, which you can see here. I have cut out in all different colors, but it basically creates a shadow for your sentiment. How cool is that? So I grab one that says Merry Everything. I grab one of the red dye colored cardstock shadow layers, and I'm just going to liquid glue these together for the inside of the card. So very simple, but it does kind of bring that color onto the inside of the card and give it a little bit of interest rather than just, you know, stamping something. It's just a little bit extra. So I'm just gluing these together, and then I will ultimately liquid glue this as well and put it on the inside of the card. Now, like I said, do stick around. I do have a couple more cards to share with you, but I do come back in here and add a little bit of blingage onto the front of the card just to give it a little something else, just because it is pretty simple overall. So these are sequins in a couple different sizes. They're white, but they have this really pretty iridescent look. So I feel like they go well with, I don't know, like winter or snow, or I don't know, just kind of works with this design. And with the fact that it's white, it kind of pops off a little bit off of this very busy background. So I'm using my jewel picker and the liquid glue just to kind of lay down a smattering of these. I have 3 on the top and 2 on the bottom. I tend to work in odd numbers. I find them more visually appealing, but you put as much blingage on the front of your card as you want. You do you. So thanks for sticking around. I have a couple pictures here of the other cards. This one you can see I did the same stencil, the same colors, but I actually masked a strip down with some low tack tape. It's like 2-inch low tack tape, and I just kind of put that right down the center, and then I did red on the top and green on the bottom. And then on the other one, I actually didn't mask it. I just kind of went darker in the corners and then more light-handed towards the center of the card and left that white space so the colors didn't overlap. But I used the same sentiment, the same concept with ink blending on some cardstock to get a perfect color match. And look at that, I got 3 completely different looking cards with the same stencils. So stencils like this are so versatile. You can use them year-round for all sorts of cards, so not just Christmas. So I encourage you to check out the shop at A Colorful Life Designs, and do use my coupon and save on your complete order if you shop. So thanks so much for watching. I'll catch you next time.